So this section we're going to be talking about the non-constant growth model. So, uh, so we're talking about valuing stocks where part of the life cycle of firm, where the uh, firm is either growing faster or slower. The examples will work will be most cases think of a younger company where they the company's growing at a higher rate, and then at some point that period that's going to end, and the company's going to become a mature company, and a mature company is more likely to have a much more constant growth rate. So step one, so start computing the dividends that are expected to be paid during the non-constant growth period. The one thing to note, every textbook is going to show you calculating the dividends in the non-constant growth rate period. And then you calculate one dividend in the constant growth period and then do the valuation. In my mind, this is an unnecessary step. You can that last non-constant growth dividend is going to grow at the constant growth rate. So you can skip that step. And if you look at the example I've posted in problems, it's called non-constant growth model. And it goes through this problem in detail. So you continue computing the dividends until you compute the last dividend that is computed by the non-constant growth rate. This model also applies to several problems in your homework, but particularly 716. That problem is the dividends are already calculated for you, but you would still use the same process to value that stock. Use investors' required rate of return. You compute the present value of all those non-constant growth dividends and then sum up the present values. This methodology does the calculation in 2 steps, which is just fine. You can actually do the calculation and effectively in one single calculation, and that is shown in that lecture with the non-constant growth model lecture. So then, as I mentioned, they compute the first dividend that is affected by the non-constant growth rate. This is an unnecessary step. Then we use that dividend to calculate the value of the stock at the end of the non-constant growth dividend. All future dividends are expected to grow at that constant rate. Modified version of the constant growth equation is used, and we apply we take the present value of that, calculate it, convert it back to today's terms to get our value, and we find the present value of that price. So, for example, if our last dividend is in year 4, which is, for example, in the 716 is the case, so that's going to give us the price in year 3. So we're going to present value that back 3 years, along with the other dividends, to get the value of that company, or value of those shares of stock. So sum the results in step 1 and step 2, and you find the intrinsic value of the stock, P0 or V0, however you prefer to look at it. This is the example that I walked through in the problem. But so we've got a company or stock where dividends are expected to grow at a 20% rate for the next 3 years. So if I was looking at this, I would just call this G1. I'd say G1 is 20%, and it's going to be last 3 years. Beginning in year 4, dividends are going to grow at a 5% rate, which will continue for the rest of the firm's life. So then I would just call this, instead of calling this G norm, I would just call this G2. So The last dividend was $1, so D0 is $1. Investors require a 15% rate of return. So we calculate the first three dividends that are going to. So our dividend, our D0 was $1. We multiply that by 1 plus the required rate of return, or $1.20. Then we take $1.20 and we multiply that by 1 plus the required rate of return and get $1.44. And then we take that $1.44 and we multiply it by 1 plus the required rate of return and get $1.72.8. You can actually, this is actually all you need to do. The next step is, as I mentioned multiple times, is unnecessary. But anyway, so we calculate the present value of all those dividends, and then step two, we take this D3 and we multiply it by the constant growth rate, 1 plus 0.05, or 1 plus the constant growth rate, and we get $1.81.44. I don't know exactly how you're supposed to say that, or $1.8144. So we can now use the constant growth model to calculate the value. Since this is D4, that's going to give us P3. So the price the expected price in year 3 is 18.144 cents. Now we have to present value that back. So we present value that back 3 years. So that's $11.93. We add it to the value of those 3 dividends, and we get $15.20 roughly. So that is the non-constant growth model. Please go and watch the video in the problem section